Okay, hello and welcome to the final session of this six-part webinar series in support of Washington History Day educators. These webinars are brought to you by OSPI's Washington History Day program and the Washington State Council for the Social Studies. My name is Hannah Tofte and I'm the state coordinator for the Washington History Day program, and I'm joined today by Brad Liebricht of the Washington State Council for the Social Studies, who will be serving as our Q&A moderator. Brad and I are pleased to welcome Andrea Reidell of the National Archives Philadelphia, who has kindly stayed at work well past her shift to join us tonight. The idea behind these webinars was to bring together History Day expertise from across the state to help History Day educators here in Washington to improve their programs. And that comes not just from the sharing of ideas, but also from the sharing of resources. So we've asked each of our presenters to provide a resource for educators to take home with them. Our friends at WSCSS will be hosting video recordings of each webinar, along with all of the presenter resources on a special History Day page in their website at wscss.org/National History Day. One free clock hour is available for each of our 6 webinars, and for those of you who signed up for clock hours for this webinar, you'll receive an email from PD Enroller within a few days that has instructions for how to complete your post-training clock hour paperwork. Today's webinar is titled Historical Research in the U.S. Accessing Federal Resources Online, and I'll be starting out our session today with a presentation on the Library of Congress and other federal libraries, and then I'll turn things over to Ange. But before we begin, just a few Zoom logistics. We're Zooming in webinar format today, so audio and video capabilities are only enabled for presenters. As attendees, you do not need to worry about muting yourselves or turning your video on or off during the presentations. However, we would absolutely love for you to engage with us through the Q&A function, which is found at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to put any questions you have for today's presenters in the Q&A at any time, and Brad will relay your questions to Ange or myself. Okay, let's get started. Give me just a second here to share my screen. Okay, Brad, can you tell me if my PowerPoint is showing up properly?
Yes, I can see it in presentation mode.
Excellent. Oh, okay, so regular.
Oh, no, it's
like regular PowerPoint mode? Great, okay. Yep. All right, thank you. So I am so excited to talk to you today about online research through the Library of Congress, and I'm also going to mention a couple other federal libraries. This Library of Congress is a resource that I have used myself and have found to be such a wealth of information, and I am of the belief that every History Day student should be searching the Library of Congress when they're doing their research. So my goals for talking to you today are overarchingly just to encourage you to share with your students that historical evidence is being preserved for the public good, and that as members of the public, they can access these resources. And I also want to introduce you to the Library of Congress and other federal libraries as institutions that are doing this work. And finally, I want to identify a few historical research resources specifically that are available online through these libraries. So I want to give you a little bit of history of the Library of Congress because I want you to see how the institution and its mission have evolved over time to what we have today, so that you can kind of gauge whether this is going to be a good place to send your students. And hint, it will be, it is. So the Library of Congress was founded in 1800 when funds were given to furnish Congress a library, and this happened when Congress moved from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., and there was just kind of a notion at this time that Congress needed books. So I think around $5,000 was given to create a legislative library, and so it was just a legislative function at this time, and it was just for members of Congress to use. And then early in the 1800s, the brand new Library of Congress burned down and the collection was lost. And so at that time, Thomas Jefferson arranged for his personal library to be purchased by the federal government and to become the new Library of Congress. And if you know anything about Thomas Jefferson, you know that this man loved books, and he loved a lot of books about a lot of different things. And so this essentially resulted in the collection of the Library of Congress like doubling in size and growing substantially in the breadth of its collections in the topics that it covered. And Thomas Jefferson thought that this was great because in his mind, there was no topic that was irrelevant to members of Congress. He considered the knowledge and ability to research of members of Congress to be foundational to our democracy. And so he thought that the Library of Congress should always be building and growing. So several librarians of Congress after Jefferson's era really took his mantle and ran with it. And by the time of the post-Civil War era, the Library of Congress had become the largest library in the United States. And this is also the time as the Library of Congress began to grow, where this notion started to arise of the Library of Congress as a national resource, as a national library, and that maybe members of the public might like to also have access to those resources. So it was kind of just starting to emerge at this time. And then an important thing happened in 1899, almost 100 years after the Library of Congress was founded, and that was that someone decided it would be a good idea to hire an actual trained librarian to serve as the Librarian of Congress. And his name was Herbert Putnam. And what Herbert Putnam did was he took his knowledge and his expertise and really legitimized the Library of Congress as a national institution. So he arranged for additional funding to be had, and that allowed him to expand the services of the library. The library started publishing. The Library of Congress took over the US Copyright Office at this time. And what that meant was that anytime someone published a book, let's say, and they copyrighted their work, a copy of that book was given to the Library of Congress's collections. So again, the size and the scope of the Library of Congress really started to grow at this time. And as people are publishing and those resources are becoming available in the Library of Congress, the public is wanting access to these resources because it's becoming increasingly more relevant to them to have access to these topics. So then once we get to the World War II era and further into the Civil Rights era, the Library of Congress had a huge growth in volume as now it's a legitimate national institution. It's continuing to grow, but also because it is now kind of behind the reins of public interest. And so in the World War II era in particular, as members of the public are starting to turn their focus outward from America and are wanting to know more about the world and about other countries and what's going on there, the Library of Congress met that challenge by really broadening their collections to include international worldwide topics. And part of doing that was that they even established field offices in other countries to collect for the library, and those still exist today. So by the time we get to 1975, it's just a huge national institution, and the goals are now that the public is accessing and using. And so at this time, the attention is turning toward increasing the visibility, increasing the access, and increasing the Library of Congress's role in education. And I tell you this so that you can see how, we heard from a lot of organizations yesterday, like the state archives, that had a very specific goal in mind. They had a very specific type of record that they preserve, a very specific purview. And I want you to know that the Library of Congress does not have that. They want to gather as much as they can, as much knowledge as they can about as many topics as they can, and make it make them accessible to as many people as they can. So that brings us to today. It's hard to know exactly how many items are in the Library of Congress collection because that's changing all the time, but the figure I found was that they have over 170 million items in their collection at this time, and on their website, they claim that they add 10,000 items to their collection every working day. And so those acquisitions are coming from copyright deposits, like I mentioned before, from gifts to the Congress, to the Library of Congress, from purchases that they make, from exchanges with other libraries that they network with in the US and abroad, and from other means. And so we have now certainly embraced that international scope of topics covered by the Library of Congress and are continuing to increase materials in that vein. And as they always have, the Library of Congress holds physical collections at their many buildings in Washington, D.C., but they also have expanded to include a very large wealth of digital collections that are available online. And the notion of the Library of Congress as America's library has certainly solidified. They still serve Congress as the research arm and the research facility of Congress, as they always have, but they are now also serving the executive and judicial branches. And in addition to the American public, they also serve the public worldwide through their digital collections and through tourism that enters the area. So I want to also clarify that the Library of Congress distinguishes themselves from the National Library of Medicine and the National Agricultural Library, which are two other federal libraries that are run by federal agencies. And they clarify that, I think, because what they want you to know is that the Library of Congress itself does not have extensive holdings on the subjects of medicine and agriculture, because there are specific other libraries for that. So if you have students who are doing science-based, medicine-based topics or agricultural-based topics, make sure that they know about the National Library of Medicine and the National Agricultural Library in addition to the Library of Congress for their research. I have explored these resources myself, and if I have time, I'll even show you the National Library of Medicine has some really cool stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over now to the internet, new share. Okay, are you seeing my web browser now, Brad?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go to the Library of Congress website, which is loc.gov. And I want you to know that my one-pager for this presentation is going to have all the links you could ever want and instructions on how to get to all of these websites, so don't feel like you need to scribble those down. I will hook you up with all of these links. So when we go to the Library of Congress main website and scroll down below their header, if we were in Washington, D.C. and wanting to check out the physical collections, we might look at the library catalog here, but today we are only interested from our state of Washington on the opposite coast. We are interested in the digital collections. We're interested in things that are available online.
Hey,
so,
Hannah?
Yes.
Sorry, your website is not showing up currently. We have a blank Google screen. That's it.
Uh-oh.
Just so you know.
Thank you. Okay, how about now? We're back? Okay, sorry about that. My screen sharing paused for some reason. Okay, so we are at loc.gov. We're on the Library of Congress main page. And we're going to scroll down. This is the library catalog that I was mentioning, but we are interested in the digital collections. So I'm going to click that digital collections button, and we are now taken to the digital collections page. The Library of Congress has 435 digital collections. And now remember, a digital collection is not a document. It's a collection of any type of historical research material, photos, maps, files, legal documents, audio, video clips. It can be all sorts of things. And they have 435 of them. And I have scrolled through all of them, and you can too if you wish. But this Aaron Copeland collection here at the top, for example, is shown to have 982 items in that collection alone. Some of them have tens of thousands of items in the collections. I, of course, am going to take you to 10th to 16th century liturgical chants, which has 55 items in it. So if you were to click on any collection, of course, my favorite being 10th to 16th century liturgical chants, you would see at the top some featured content. And then if you scroll down a little further, you could learn a little bit about this collection, which was written by one of the Library of Congress staff. And then if you wanted to actually view the items in this collection, we come back up to the top and click collection items, and we are now given all 55 items in this collection. So if I had a student doing a History Day top project on 10th to 16th century liturgical chants, I would probably encourage them to scroll through all 55 objects and read about them and look at the pictures and see if there's anything useful to them. But thankfully, blessedly, the Library of Congress also allows us to search within a collection. So within this collection, I could also type in my personal favorite 10th to 16th century liturgical chant and search within the collection to see if there was anything available on that. So that is a great feature of these Library of Congress collections. And I mentioned that I had scrolled through all of them, and I want to let you know some highlights that I found. So keep in mind, if your students are doing any of these topics, they've got to go to the Library of Congress. Black history and civil rights, women's suffrage, the Civil War, great collections on the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln, Native American history post-contact, the founding of America and the founding fathers, migrant farm workers, music, motion pictures and animation, Japanese American internment, child labor, sports history, American presidents, transportation and communication, and World War I and II. There's plentiful collection on all of those topics. Okay, so again, if you wanted to search within the digital collections or search within an individual collection, there's the functionality there for you to do that. And I want to show you just a few collections that I think are particularly useful, especially to History Day students. And I'm going to start with the big one, which is Chronicling America. You can find it right here at the top in featured content, but if for some reason it wasn't there, you could search in the digital collections for Chronicling America and find it there as well. So I'm going to click on that. Chronicling America is a partnership project between the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Library of Congress. And it's a historic American newspaper archive. They have, as you can see right here, 16,816,586 pages of newspapers dating all the way back to 1789 in their collection. And they have some great search features. You can do an advanced search here by state, by name of newspaper, by date. You can type in keywords, key phrases, and do a search that way. I'm going to just do a simple search here on the search page. So if I had a student who was studying the women's suffrage movement in Washington State and wanted to learn more about Emma Smith DeVoe and how she popped up in the news, I could do a search here for Emma Smith DeVoe. But Emma Smith DeVoe was a suffragette before she came to Washington, and she also did suffrage work after Washington had passed women's suffrage and she moved on. And so if you wanted to search by state or by date to kind of narrow that down, you could do that. I'm just going to do a simple Emma Smith DeVoe search and click go. No narrowing down at all. Okay, so I have 460 results for Emma Smith DeVoe that have popped up. And one thing I love about Chronicling America, well, two things I love about Chronicling America here. Their search results appear as fairly decently sized images, which is great instead of a list of words or titles. And you can see those red markings on the images are hits for Emma Smith DeVoe. So I can look for one with more or less hits or whatever I think is going to be most useful. And then below each image, you can also see where this newspaper, what the name of the newspaper is and where it's from and the date. So if I wanted to know what Boise, Idaho's Evening Capital News had to say about Emma Smith DeVoe, I might click on this, but I don't. I want to know what the Aberdeen Herald from Aberdeen, Washington said about Emma Smith DeVoe on March 1st, 1909. So I'm going to click this one here. And I have seen on that main page that there are 2 hits for Emma Smith DeVoe. And so when this page opens, again at the top, I've got the name of the newspaper. And then as I scroll down, I can see those 2 red markings. Now I have a scroll wheel on my mouse, so I can easily scroll in and out. But if you don't, you can use the zoom buttons up here on the top left to scroll or to zoom in and out on the web page. So I'm going to zoom in on Emma Smith DeVoe hits here, and I'm going to learn that Mrs. Emma Smith DeVoe was president of the Washington Equal Suffrage Association, that she's in the city today, presumably that city being Aberdeen, and that she'll be lecturing this evening in the Baptist Church on the subject of equal suffrage. Awesome, I love this, I want to use it for my History Day project. So what do I do now? Well, I could download this entire page in PDF format up here at the top, or I think this might even be JPEG here too. Or I can zoom in on just this portion that's relevant to me and focus on that. And now I could take a screenshot and save it somewhere on my computer. But if I do that, then these red boxes are still going to be there. And I don't want that on my History Day project. So what I can also do is center in on what I want to copy and then click this square with the scissors button up here at the top, and that's going to cut that out for me. It opens up a new page where it has cut out just what I had shown on my screen, taken the red boxes away, and now it's giving me the option to print this image or to download it. And once I download it, I can crop it down further if I want to, or I can just leave it as it is. And so this is a really useful way to just center in on the information that you need. Now, another thing I might want to do, since I'm pulling from a newspaper, is I might want to go to the first page of that newspaper, because of course suffragette news was never on the front page. So I might want to go to the front page of the newspaper and also take the heading of the newspaper to accompany my article. So if I want to do that, I go up to the top and I can see that I'm on page 5 and I want to check out page 1. So I go to page 1 there, and I can see that I am looking at the semi-weekly Aberdeen Herald from Aberdeen, Washington, Monday, March 1st, 1909, and I could also cut that out and have that heading accompany my article. Furthermore, at the bottom of the page, Chronicling America has even given me a citation to use in my annotated bibliography. They've taken that task for me. So this is really an excellent resource. Every student should be searching for their topic on Chronicling America, because chances are that America has written about something related to your topic, and it's really nice to be able to include news articles and newspapers, especially if they have photos, in your History Day project. So this is great, and it does the citation for you. Okay, so back to let me stop for questions real quick. Brad, is anything on things I've covered so far?
Well, Hannah, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if you had a favorite liturgical chant.
10th to 16th century liturgical chant?
Century.
You know, it's so hard to pick just one, Brad. You know I can't.
I thought I'd ask at this point.
Thank you.
The chat box is clear, so please continue.
I appreciate the opportunity. Okay, so we're going to go back to the Library of Congress digital collections, which I could just back arrow a bunch, or you can type it in. It's loc.gov/collections is how to get to their digital collections page. Again, I'll have all those links ready for you. So the one other source I want to show you is the Habs Hare Howells documentation. And again, this is in featured content right here. So the Habs Hare Howells program is run by the National Park Service, but all the documentation is deposited in the Library of Congress. And when we had our presenter yesterday from the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, she showed us how to use the Wizard database that Washington State maintains to keep records of the built environment, the historical built environment here in Washington State. And there's a federal version of that as well. And that's the Historic American Building Survey, Historic American Engineering Record, and Historic American Landscape Survey. And so that the building survey covers historic architecture, the engineering record covers historic sites that are related to engineering and industry, and the landscape survey covers landscapes, which could be anything from a garden in an estate to the Grand Canyon. I mean, it's just historical landscapes in general. So the purpose of this program is an acknowledgement that these resources are being impacted by our changing world, and that it's in the public interest to have documentation of them and their historic nature. And so the documentation of these resources has been deposited here in the Library of Congress, and that's what you will find when you search this database. So one topic that I see a lot in Washington History Day is the Elwha Dam. And especially now that that dam is gone, you have to be able to find photos of it. So I'm going to search, again, thank you Library of Congress for the ability to search this collection. I'm going to search the Habs Hare Howells database here for Elwha. And then click the search button here. Oh no, technical difficulties. Let's try that one more time. Okay, great. So we've got 3 results here, and this top one I can see has 32 photos and 7 drawings. That's great. So I'm going to click into here. I can view 32 photos of the historic Elwha Dam and Hydroelectric Project. And these are all high quality photos that were taken for this purpose of depositing them with the Library of Congress. And I can also view 7 engineering drawings. So this could be really helpful for a student who's doing a project on the Elwha Dam and wants some some contextual information about what this dam looked like and how it operated, and the, engineering drawings that you can't necessarily just get from emailing someone, especially for a dam that's no longer existent. So that's what the Habs Hair House database does. It's that type of documentation of the built environment. Okay, one more thing in digital collections. So I want to tell you about the Veterans History Project. And all these digital collections are in here alphabetically, and I do not want to scroll down through 435 of them to get to V. So I'm going to search up here at the top, searching in digital collections for Veterans History Project. And I'm happy to find it right here. Okay, so what the Veterans History Project is a documentation of personal narratives by American war veterans. And as their about page notes, this could be audio or video clips, this could be transcripts of interviews, this could be written information, and they may also have included some correspondence or photos or things like that in with their account. So if we go back to the homepage of the Veterans History Project and we want to search the veterans collections, now we can search up at the top by the name of a veteran, by a keyword about maybe a specific battle, or we can just kind of do a more general search. I'll say World War II and Navy because my granddad served in World War II in the Navy. And then I'm going to click go. And now I'm brought to this page where I have 15,141 hits of veteran accounts of naval service in World War II. So if I were to click on this top one, Conrad J. Will, this is what it looks like when the information is not available to you online. So I've got information about the collection, I've got a little bit of biographical information, but that's all that I've got here. So I want to go back and I want to encourage you to click on ones that have the View Digitized Collection button. So if I come down here, let's say to George Maurice Abbott and click View Digitized Collection, now I've got some information about Mr. Abbott here also, but I've also got access to an 88-minute video interview from him where he recounts his experience of the war. So if you have any students doing any war-related topic and they are looking for some personal narrative about the experience, the Veterans History Project is an awesome resource for you to consider having them go through, and there are all different types of resources available within this database. Okay. There are two other kind of hidden resources in the Library of Congress system that I want to show you. So first we're going to go back out to the Library of Congress main page, loc.gov. And actually I'm going to check in again with Brad real quick. Any questions? Okay, great, excellent. So I'm going to scroll down past the header. And the Library of Congress has created quite a few teacher resources specifically for teachers, but I think that your History Day students are going to benefit from these as well. So we're going to go over here to the Teachers tab and click on Classroom Materials, and then click on Primary Source Sets. And what these are exactly what they claim to be: collections of primary sources on different topics that the Library of Congress has put together for use by educators. But if students are doing their History Day project on one of these topics, this will be so useful for them as they start their research journey. So I'm going to scroll down to Civil War music because I think that might be a really cool topic for this year's theme of communication and history. And I'm going to open the Civil War music primary source set. Now you can see at the top we've got a PDF teacher's guide. But then if we scroll down to the primary sources, we've got photos of musicians, we've got PDFs of sheet music, and there's even an audio file down here at the bottom. So again, there are quite a few different primary source sets here. Your students might even want to choose their topic based on one of these primary source sets, knowing that they can find primary sources on it. I mean, this might be a good place to even start one's research. But they have quite a few of them in here on a whole different range of topics, and it's kind of hidden under teacher resources, so I want to make sure that you know that that's there. Now, one other thing I want to show you, again, back to the Library of Congress main page, is under the Researchers tab. So if we go to Researchers, there are so many links on this page, and this is kind of hidden. I'll make sure it's clear to you in your handout where this is, but on the very right-hand side, there's something called Research Guides. So under research guides, this takes a minute to load because this is huge. Again, it's exactly what it seems to be. These are guides to researching through the Library of Congress system on a variety of subjects. Still loading on my end. Okay, great. So I'm going to scroll down. There's 73 subjects, and these are just overarching, like, umbrella subjects. So I'm going to click on history, for example, which has 105 research guides within it. And then I'm going to click on the top one here, 13th Amendment. So if my students were doing a project on the 13th Amendment and I was able to direct them here, what would they find? First of all, an introduction to the 13th Amendment, a link to the 13th Amendment. We got a few primary sources here, and this is just the introduction page. Over on the left here, we can then go down to digital collections, and they can find all the digitally available resources on the 13th Amendment, including documents on its debate in the Senate, debate in the House. They're directing me to the Abraham Lincoln Papers. That was one of the collections. African American pamphlets. These are all collections in the Library of Congress system. And even Chronicling America, they're recommending that I view. The next one down, related online resources. They're encouraging me to visit congress.gov. They're directing me to some exhibitions on the 13th Amendment. There's a teacher's page, even to some external websites that the Library of Congress recommends. And finally, even a list of printed resources. And all of this stuff is hyperlinked. So this would be a great place, again, for your students to start their research and just branch off from here. Even some books for young readers. Okay, my time is almost up, but I want to quickly jump over to the National Library of Medicine because I know that Washington students seem to really love their science and medicine-based topics. So I'm going to go to NLM, that's National Library of Medicine, .NIH, that's National Institute of Health.gov. The National Library of Medicine is managed by the National Institute of Health. And again, this library is really focused on modern resources like modern medical journals and things like that. But if we go to resources for you and to for researchers, now we're seeing a whole bunch of biomedical literature, again, a lot of like more modern things, and we scroll all the way down and there's a little section here on the history of medicine where they have some historical collections. Great. Once we go into the historical collections, we can scroll down and see they've got digital collections. We're 2 for 2. Okay, within the digital collections, I am now given up at the top quite a wealth of digital collections in relation to the history of medicine. We've got some images, archives and personal papers, World War I, World War II. There's even some public health videos, a whole collection of public health films, historical films. But what I want to call your attention to, you're welcome to peruse those at your leisure. I would encourage you to scroll down to the bottom to profiles in science. And the National Library of Medicine has put together profiles on all these key figures in science. And we know History Day kids love to focus on key figures. So I want to show you Virginia Apgar, and you might recognize that name. She's the inventor of the Apgar score for infants. And this is how doctors can communicate with each other and keep records about the medical situation of a newborn infant. So when we go into Virginia Apgar's profile, what do we have? First, we've got a little intro to her. If I go over to the story, I've got biographical information. Here's Virginia Apgar's story. And then if I go to collection items, I have 125 primary sources on Virginia Apgar. So we've got 67 documents and 58 images. So I'm just going to go into all images here. And you can see we've got a whole lot of photos from throughout her life. And even some papers that she's published. And all sorts of resources in there by person. So again, if your students are considering a medicine or science-based topic, I would encourage them to check out the National Library of Medicine. An agricultural-based topic, I would encourage them to check out the National Agricultural Library. And any topic whatsoever, they must check out the Library of Congress and Chronicling America. That's the end of my time. Brad, are there any questions for me?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can transition over to Ange. Ange, are you ready to go?
I am.
The stage is yours, my friend.
Do you want to do an intro or should I introduce myself, Hannah?
Please introduce yourself.
Okay, all right. So let me go ahead and do a screen share here. And I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start here. All right, can you see that okay? Yes, okay, great. Well, hello everybody, and thanks for being here tonight. Thanks to Hannah for the chance to talk with you about National History Day and the resources of the National Archives. Before I start in showing you that, I just wanted to add in a little personal note that I did live in Washington State for 5 years. It was some time ago. My daughter was born in Washington State and she's about to graduate from high school. So that tells you about how long it is. But I was a part of the Washington State Executive Committee at the time and did help my regional coordinator in Southwest Washington in Vancouver to do the program as well. So if we have any Southwest Washington teachers on today, special shout out to you guys. I miss Washington a lot, but I've loved the chance to see other places in the world too. So my name is Andrea Reidell. I have worked at the Minnesota Historical Society, where I first got my taste of National History Day. I've worked for the Washington State Historical Society. I've worked for Eastern State Penitentiary Historic Site here in Philadelphia. And for the last 12 years, I've worked at the National Archives. So lots of National History Day experience in different places, and lots to share with you today about National Archives resources for teachers and students. And I'm just going to dive right into our resources. I'm not going to give the same sort of background about our agency that Hannah did about the LOC. If you're interested in finding out more about the National Archives, we were founded in 1934. We have a really, interesting history. So feel free to do that on our website. But like I said, I wanted to focus today on what we have available for you. And I also wanted to let you know that the National Archives is not just in Washington, D.C. or College Park, Maryland. We have facilities across the country. This was set up years ago in a regional system that would help people access the historical documents and materials from their region. So you'll see in Washington State there's a dot in Seattle. Seattle is an in-person resource back once we're in person again. And so just wanted to let you know that. And each of our facilities holds records from the surrounding area. So Washington, Alaska, Idaho, probably Montana as well. So you'll see on the map where we are, and hello, there I am in Philadelphia. I wanted to let you know what we have at the National Archives. We have the records of the federal government, and at first blush that looks like or sounds like to people that we wouldn't have a lot, but if we think of the ways, all the different ways that the federal government touches our lives and is a part of people's lives, you'll see we have a lot of documents. We do have a small percentage. We do not have every single record that was ever created by the federal government. We have about 1% of the records, but we still have billions of things available for you to choose from and for your History Day students to learn about. So the National Archives website is archives.gov, and you'll see right in the middle of the page here that there are teacher resources, and that's the page I've screenshotted here for you. If you go to archives.gov, education, you'll see a thing that talks about what our different resources for teachers are. I'm just going to scroll down the page a little bit on a screenshot again, so you can see some of the programs that we have. And I wanted to especially let you know about some of these because they're especially valuable now. One of those is our distance learning programs. I should say that all National Archives programs are free. They are your tax dollars at work. So if one of these looks good to you and you think, oh, but does my school or does my district have funds for that? That is not a thing you need to worry about. Our programs are free. We have our distance learning programs grouped by grade school, middle school, and high school. And I understand from Hannah that many of the teachers tonight are middle school teachers. So I just wanted to do a screenshot of the middle school distance learning programs we have. It gives you a little bit more detail about what days that that they run, how far in advance they have to be scheduled, some of the technology things. But especially I wanted to call your attention to the things on the right-hand side at the top, because those are the various distance learning programs that we have for middle school students. And depending on the level of your students, perhaps you have students that that might be able to do some high school projects. I always suggest that teachers not just go to the grade level they're teaching, but one above and one below, so you can kind of scroll through and see what best matches your needs for your students. So if there are those of you who have distance learning capabilities, I invite you to learn more about this. All of these resources will be available on the resource sheet, so don't feel like you have to quick scramble and write all this down. One of the things we really stress is students getting to know primary source documents. And of course, sometimes when students start working with primary documents, they're still thinking of primary as in the sense in the most important, but we want them to really know that a primary source document was created at the time and or by someone who was there at an event. And so we have a series of worksheets available online, both as downloadable PDFs or as web pages themselves, whichever works best for you, that really help students connect with the primary sources we have. And you'll see, again, sometimes when people think of the National Archives, they just think of written documents, but we've got photos and posters and cartoons, videos, sound recordings, all these various things, and we have document sheets for all of those. So you'll see on the left-hand side, we have worksheets for younger students or those students who are learning English. On the right-hand side, we have worksheets that are matched to secondary students. And again, go through and see what you need that will work best for your students. But what we teach in the sheets are the 4 steps that we consider essential for learning about primary documents, learning to be able to access and analyze what is in a primary document. So you can see that's meet the document, observe its parts, try to make sense of it, and use it as historical evidence. So just wanted to give you an example of one of the sheets that I'm talking about in case this is something that you would like to use. Each section to really specific to try to get the students to hone in on what the document is, and especially thinking about source perspective, because a lot of times, you know how this is, when you first introduce primary sources to students, they think because it's old and written down, that means it's true. And of course, it is one person's perspective on a certain event written for a certain group of people. So it has a perspective just like all pieces of, all of the things we have to sort through in a day. We have to think about that for primary sources especially. All right, so now I'm going to take you into DocsTeach in just a few minutes, but I wanted to talk with you about it first. If you haven't been to DocsTeach, I greatly encourage you to do so. Every teacher I've ever introduced to DocsTeach loves it. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to add you to the group. This too is a free tool. If you decide to sign up for it, then we don't share your email address. We don't. Signing up for it just means that you're able to create and save your own documents and activities. But if you don't want to sign up, you'll still be able to access all the ones that are pre-created. So in DocsTeach, you can see at the bottom, the bar mentions the things you can do here. So you can explore primary source documents if your students just want to look through things, or you do. As a teacher, you can discover activities that you can teach with. These are activities designed by our team at the National Archives or teachers across the country, because once you've signed in and created an account, you can create your own activities from scratch, or you can take activities that are there and modify them. And so that's the third thing you see at the bottom there, create fun and engaging activities. So as I said, lots of primary sources in DocsTeach, and as you'll see in a minute, they're sorted by historical era, and then you can also sort by type of document, right? And you see all the different things we have in here: census records, court documents, executive orders, all those sorts of things. And there's some examples along the bottom, various maps and other primary sources. Now, in the activities tab, we have templates that are available for you to use to create your activities. And a couple of them are highlighted here. The one on the left is an activity called weighing the evidence. And you can see the primary sources along the bottom that you want to use or that you found in someone else's lesson, and two different interpretations of an event or a historical happening. And the students read through the primary sources and then need to put them on the scale and decide which documents they think support the one interpretation and which support the other. That then helps them come to a conclusion. So that's one of our more in-depth ones. You know, students are going to be looking at 8 to 10 primary documents. If you wanted to start off with something simpler, the activity that I have in the middle there is just a matching game. So you take primary sources and you match them up. In this case, it's the various things in the Constitution, and then the student can do it that way. So in that case, the student doesn't need to look as closely at the documents, but it's a good kind of, intro to working with primary documents. And then the one on the right, we do have mapping activities as well too. So I'm telling you tonight just the tip of the iceberg and what's available in DocsTeach, but I did want to let you know that we have on-demand DocsTeach webinars. We also have mini webinars that we hosted in the spring and the summer. 20 minutes, so you don't need to, commit a whole hour, hour and a half, or however much. 20 minutes that talk about different parts of DocsTeach and how to access it. Each of those sessions was recorded and is posted online. So if you'd like to learn more about DocsTeach, I will show you once we get live where you can find those and what are some of the topics that are available. So This is the screenshot of that page. As I said, I'll show it to you when it is live, but you can see some of the sessions we have, from choosing an activity, modifying existing activities, to we had a series that was specifically for teachers who are teaching virtually, which are many teachers these days. So creating primary source sets, how to lead a Docs Teach activity, online, and things like that. So those are available for you as resources. The other thing on Docs Teach that is available for you as research is our page that's specifically devoted to National History Day and its theme for this year, Communication in History. So once you get into Docs Teach, you can quickly go to the NHD page, and here we've compiled both primary sources on the left by topic. So there's some that you would expect to see for communication in history: telegraph, radio, telephone, but there are others that students might not necessarily think of right away. So codes, spying and sabotage, communication related patents, protests, things like that. Those will all lead you to primary sources related to those. So it's like a pre-curated list. And to be able to introduce those documents and primary source analysis to your students, we have on the right for teachers teaching activities related to that. So if you know that your students might be wanting to look at propaganda, there are teaching activities that specifically use our documents that are created so you can present a lesson to them about that. All right, so I'll get back to Docs Teach in just a few minutes, and like I said, we'll do it live so that you can see some of what goes on. But I wanted to share some of the things, a few documents that are Washington specific. Again, sometimes people think we only have documents that relate to Washington, D.C., but we cover the whole United States. So there are things, I just did a quick search, literally typed in Washington State into the search bar in Docs Teach and came up with a couple of these things. So we have the Point Elliott Treaty here. I'm sure you're all familiar with that and teach with it, but we have this in Docs Teach, and so students could see the digitized original. And this one is interesting. At first, it didn't seem like it would be connected with communication in history, this photo of loggers, but it was actually created. There are introductory notes in each document in Docs Teach. So it noted that this was meant to be turned into a postcard, and so people could send it to their families and talk about the great forests and kind of what man was triumphing over nature in a picture like this with those four men sitting on the stump. We do have pictures that are much later into the 70s where it shows pollution and the effects of clear cutting. So if your students were doing an environmental topic, this could be a photo that they might want to use from early on. Moving over to the other side of the state, I found a couple things from Spokane, and this is from the American Red Cross in Spokane in 1917-18, and you can see all the women there and officials or soldiers in the background on the train car. This one I really loved, and I would like to find out more about it at some point. It's a letter that was written by an attorney in Spokane in 1907 to the Commissioner General of Immigration. It's actually a series. It's the letter from the lawyer to Sergeant, and then the response from Sergeant back to Connor, the lawyer. October 1907, And it has some questions about two Chinese merchants who were living in Spokane and wanted to marry, as young men of a certain age do. The Chinese Exclusion Act prohibited non-married women, Chinese women, from coming into the United States. And keep in mind that in 1907, the Chinese Exclusion Act had been in place for over 20 years, and it was the law. I'm sure many of you teach about it in your classrooms, but in this case, the lawyer asked, what if the women, instead of the men having to close their businesses and go to China to marry the women, what if the women came to the port of entry, and before they entered the United States, the men met them there and married them? And so that's what the lawyer is asking on behalf of his clients. So an interesting case. And as I mentioned, I did live in Vancouver, so of course I had to find something from Southwest Washington in my search. And again, an environmental topic. Here's a sign that the Environmental Protection Agency created and put up in Vancouver in the 70s, and reminding people that they should carpool rather than all driving, in their own cars. So that is it for my slides. I'm going to move us into DocsTeach, but before I do, I just wanted to check and see, are there any questions for me? I'm happy to take questions about anything you just saw. I just threw a lot of information at you.
We don't have any questions at the present in the chat box, but DocsTeach is pretty awesome.
Yes, thank you. So here I'm going to take you live to DocsTeach so you can see how it all works. And again, I'm just giving you a couple of minutes worth. Please explore some more. So I am not signed in. I do have, of course, a DocsTeach account, but I wanted to show you all the things you can see, even if you're not signed in, even if you don't sign up for an account. So the main DocsTeach page, you'll want to always use the menu. You can see the home, documents, activity tools, popular topics. Now, this I mentioned before when I had a screenshot of our National History Day page, but you'll see we have landing pages for a bunch of different topics. So, women's rights, the Constitution, the Civil War, rights in America. And let me just take you to one of them so you get a sense. They're going to look a lot like the History Day page I showed you, where they have primary sources and teaching activities on here, a little bit of background information, and then here you go, primary sources related to this and teaching activities. So let's just say we want to look at women of color in the suffrage movement, something that people have been talking more and more about. And we have 8 different documents here that talks about that. Including photo of Mary Church Terrell, a letter from Ida Wells Barnett, writing into the government, and a couple of others as well. So this isn't necessarily going to be what your students are going to base their whole project on, but they're great resources to get them started or to add to their project if they've already chosen their topic. So those are the activity tools. Let me show you, those are popular topics. Let me show you the resources that you have here. Some of them I had already mentioned, the document analysis worksheets. This steps you through how to create activities, how to manage assignments.
And could you talk about that again real quick? We got a question about, do you have to have a login to access and or use the DocsTeach page? I know you mentioned it before, but we had a couple people asking to clarify.
Okay, great. The short answer is no. What you're seeing now is what you would see if you just went to docsteach.org. So you have access to all the public material and all the public activities. If you sign in and if you create an account, again, super easy, that means once you see a document you like, you can you can save it in a folder in DocsTeach. You can create classrooms in DocsTeach. So having an account means that gives you more ability to work with the documents as you want to, right? Like, so I have whole folders of, various topics that I want to have in my folders, and then I can go back and get them at any time. So you do not need to sign up. If you use this with your students, which you should, your students do not need to sign up and have an account, okay? So they will be able to access this no matter what. The benefit to teachers signing up is so you can more easily use and manipulate the material the way you want to. So thanks for that question.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. So down here to webinars, I just wanted to show you, this is where all those recorded webinars are, okay? So all these different things you might want to know about DocsTeach, someone will be able to tell you in this recorded video. And you can see some of them down here. There's my fantastic colleague, Katie. She did most of our series because she does our distance learning. Let me take you into an activity now. Well, actually, let me quick show you the activity tools first. They're all listed down here on the side. So, but if you go to all tools, these are the templates you can use to create your activities. So, and then right here, if you see one and you want to create one like this, you can go right over to create new activity. So you can use activities that help students focus on details, spotlight certain things, zoom and crop. This is a great one to use with pictures. I use this a lot with younger kids who, where you show them only part of the photo and ask them for their ideas about what the picture is, what they see, and then you can reveal through the activity the whole picture, so they get a sense of that. So some of the things that we all do in the classroom, but you can do digitally here with DocsTeach. So compare and contrast, whiteout, blackout, finding a sequence if you want your students to be able to think more chronologically, making connections between documents, mapping history. Here's the seeing the big picture and the weighing the evidence, or interpreting data, right? So you can use any of these templates with whatever of the documents that you want to. Now, let me take you into an activity. All right. The search page is going to look the same whether you're searching for documents or whether you're searching for activities. But you'll see that we have things grouped by era. So if you're looking for a topic that is going to be later on, maybe you're looking at Great Depression, maybe you're looking for post-war United States. It's grouped by era for you. And the other good thing to know about this is you can search by historical era, as I mentioned, by grade level, by thinking skill, or by activity type. Now, of course, the grade level and the activity type and the thinking skill are just searchable for you, not if you're just looking at primary documents. But if you're a teacher looking for activities, you can search by this way. So I'm just gonna go into one down here. I'll do the post-war United States. And you can see there's 17 results. Analyzing the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, cultural diplomacy and propaganda, that would be a good one for this year. All right, how about this one? Just to give you an example, examining Rosa Parks' arrest record. Now, as a teacher, you're going to see this up at the right-hand side. Who created this activity, the historical era, the thinking skill it uses, where it falls on Bloom's taxonomy, and the grade level. And what you'll see below that is a little bit of information about the document and then the suggested teaching instructions. And again, use this as you want to or not want to. You can always modify activities, but these are the suggestions for this specific activity as it stands now. In DocsTeach, you can always zoom in easily with your mouse or however you like to zoom, so students can see things in a lot of depth. And okay, let me go back to here. All right, now you'd get the activity together, you'd find it on DocsTeach, or you'd create or modify one. Where your students would go, the link you would share for your students is Start Activity. And this is the student page. You can see how it says that at the top. This is the student page. And so they're not going to see all the things that you did about where it is on Bloom's taxonomy and all that. They don't need to see that. They need to know what they're doing. That's at the top. This is your assignment. And then look at the discussion question. You can see some of it is blacked out. And then once they've done whatever the activity asked them to do, they can click when you're done, and they can put their responses in here. And if you have an account, and I think even if you don't actually, but if you can put they could put their responses in, put your preferred email in there. So if you want to use one that is through DocsTeach, so you don't get all those emails, you can do that because you've been able to set up classrooms too. And then they put in their response, they send it to you, and you are good to go in terms of their responses. So before I wrap up, because I know I'm running a little over, let me just show you again searching for documents. First, I showed you searching for activities. So we have the same setup by historical era. And let's just say I want to search the Civil War and Reconstruction, and I want posters. It will filter it for you so that there are 5 posters that come up that the students can learn more about by clicking on it. They'll see the document, they can view it more closely if they wanted to. There's a little bit of information, and down here, here's that thing we always love, the full citation. So if a student used this document, here is the citation for them to put in their bibliography. Whew. So that are, in a nutshell, quickly, are what some of the resources we have available for you and your students. Any other questions I can answer for you? I know it's getting close to dinner time for you guys.
There aren't any questions in the chat box, but there are a lot of people saying thank you for sharing these wonderful resources with us. I've been using DocsTeach for a while, and you just showed me a bunch of stuff that I didn't even know it could do. So
oh, great,
I'm looking forward to getting in there and seeing what else is available.
I'm glad to hear that. And feel free to contact me. Hannah has my contact info, and it will be on the sheet that I give to you, the little handy 2-page how to access these resources. We on the education team at the National Archives are happy to hear from you at any point.
Thank you so much to Andrea Reidell for sharing your expertise today, and an absolute wealth of resources at the National Archives website. We really appreciate you being here, and I'd also like to thank the Washington State Council for the Social Studies and Brad Liebricht for partnering with Washington History Day on these webinars. This has been an absolute pleasure to present, and I hope has been useful for Washington History Day educators and social studies educators here in our state to improve their practice. And again, recordings of all 6 webinars, as well as all presenter resources, will be available to you at wscss.org/National History Day. And the Washington State Council for the Social Studies shares access to all these resources freely. They're not behind any sort of firewall or anything. So again, thank you, Brad, for doing that, and to the Washington State Council for being willing to be our library for these webinars where educators can continue to access these resources. Any final words, Brad?
No, we got a couple questions about when things will be available. Sessions 1 through 4 are currently available right now on our website. Everything is live, including the webinar videos. And session 5, which we did yesterday, and session 6, which we're about ready to wrap up, should be up in the next couple of days, probably mid next week.
Excellent. Nothing final from me. So have a good night, everyone, and thank you for joining us for any and all of these webinars that you participated in.
Bye. Thank you.